There are luxury boats which just spark the urge to do sport. One of these is the Azimut S6. But sometimes the luxury world gets distracted, is drawn more to the aesthetics, and it forgets to think about the technical qualities. Today, we're going to see if that's the case here, looking at the aesthetics of this marvellous model, which we will then put to the test, just to understand what influence they've had technologically when the boat was actually built.
The outside was designed by Stefano Rahini, which you can see immediately. It's a style that makes all the Azimuts stand out. All you need to do is look at the cut and the angle of the window reflecting the light like it was a diamond. The clean cut of the glass syncs well with the defined lines of the bridge. It has a sharp profile and the view from up high shows a perfect balance of space between the bridge and the dimensions of the superstructure. The sun deck at the bow is a trapezoidal shape. There is a sofa close to the windscreen which you can't use when you are sailing, otherwise the pilot wouldn't see anything. The fabrics are technical yet at the same time refined, a bit like the rest of the yacht. In the cockpit, the sofa next to the table is half protected by the fly, while the sun deck is in full sun, unless you decide to put the shade up. And there's a handy rail around the mattress. Below, the lockers show just how much attention Azimut has put into the storage areas too. It might seem strange, but 3 engines can take up less space than 2. Well, that's what happens with the Volvo Penta IPS propulsion system, which reduces the engine room dimensions enough to create a very big garage for a hydrojet tender that could go up to 3.3 metres. The lounge is big and welcoming, with a lunch table that can be a coffee table with a little adjustment. The low-backed sofa means you can admire the sea in front of a TV unit.
This material, which is carbon fibre film, hides the real carbon structure.
The kitchen unit is so elegant that it's the eye-catcher in the room. The portion of the roof that opens up is so big that it seems like we're in an open. Everything that we are looking at inside this Azimut S6 is the work of Francesco Guida. It has a particular look, seems quite plain and linear, but it really highlights the details. You can see the research has gone into using innovative materials, which have been integrated effortlessly with the traditional oak, mixed with seafaring aluminium and steel borders. In the main cabin, the bed is on the diagonal, which becomes the basis for this layout. It's interesting and functional. The big mirror makes it seem lighter and more spacious. Along the left side, you can choose between a storage unit or armchairs or a dressing table. The windows, a long-time trademark, still draw attention, as does the view they give you. In the guest room at the bow, the side walls are vertical, which gives you the feeling of space, not common for a guest cabin, and the dunnage has no steps. Of course, we are in a part of the boat that is still wide because right at the tip of the bow, there's the crew cabin. The double has 2 single beds. There are 2 bathrooms, one in the main cabin and the other is shared between the other 2 cabins.
Osservando la timoneria, la plancia,
Looking at the helm, the console or the driver's area, you can immediately see that the owner of this yacht is looking for luxury, as well as performance.
Mi piace questa sistemazione con timone e manette comode.
I like this system with the rudder and paddle close by, so you can sail quickly. And then, in this other area, the mooring commands are on the side, so I can manage the manoeuvre better and even shout out a few orders from the window.
Abbiamo tre sistemi
There are 3 Volvo Penta IPS 700 systems here. That means 550 horsepower engines. This in particular is the D8 model, with its 6 inline cylinders, double delivery turbo and volumetric compressor. It's a 7,700 centimetre cubed engine.
Come al solito, la spinta
As usual, the drive of these diesels is multiplied by the IPS propulsion system. And there is iPod drive. There are 3 units here, so that's 3 pod drives and 6 propellers. So what happens when we set off?
La spinta, anche in fase di
It's powerful even when it's planing.
Ma c'è un altro aspetto che caratterizza le prestazioni ed è la
However, there is another aspect that influences the performance, which is that most of the superstructure is made out of carbon fibre. Azimut has rolled this technology out across all its recent 60-footer plus yachts, so actually means there are a good 11 units that have been built like this, more solid and lighter. And they've used carbon for the whole superstructure on the S6 as well as the stern bridge, the garage, the soft top, and even for a good part of the bridge surfaces. And let's see what the advantages are.
alla velocità di 20 nodi con i motori a 2
At 20 knots with engines at 2,000 revs per minute, petrol consumption is 160 litres an hour, which is around 8 litres per mile.
Avere la tuga leggera però porta anche altri vantaggi, significa avere
Having a light deck house means there are other advantages too, like more stability, which is good news for sun tanning, but also when we're sailing, mooring, turning.
Siamo passati alla velocità di 27 nodi.
We've got past 27 knots now, and considering that petrol consumption is nearly the same as before, a little more than 8 litres per mile, exactly 8.1 in fact, the engines are revving at 2,400 revs a minute, but this isn't as fast as it can go.
Quando accelero, tutte le sezioni prodiere si
When I accelerate, the area at the bow dries out and rises up, so the boat can go faster. This is the effect they wanted and why they shaped the boat like they did, to make it perform.
Ci sono altri due valori che meritano di essere considerati.
There are two other things to take into consideration on this boat. The dead rise, for one, right in the middle of the boat is 21.2 degrees, and then the stern is 15.5 degrees. What does that mean? That the hull has a really deep V that allows you to go fast and comfortably over waves.
A proposito di correre,
And talking about going fast, 30 knots, 2,600 revs a minute, that's a good cruising speed.
c'è un po' di onda, ma il beccheggio è minimo, a dimostrazione del fatto che hanno saputo studiare bene le linee d'acqua e distribuire bene i pesi.
There are a few waves, but not much movement, demonstrating the fact that they knew how to study the water lines and distribute the weight well along the 18-metre length. That means you can make any adjustments easily to then get a maximum speed of... Well, we're doing 2,950 revs per minute at 36 knots.
Tutto questo quanto costa? 1.280.000 euro. Ma voglio fare un'altra considerazione finale.
And how much does all this cost? €1,280,000. And let me tell you one last thing. They've called it the S6 because they wanted to show that it's sporty. I would have called it the ST6 though, and added the letter T to show we're talking about a high-tech yacht too.